Yeah, so the roads are really shit and muddy at the moment, and it's kind of raining every now and then, but I figured I'd come for a quick drive and explain a bit about the whole turbocharger, supercharger thing. Basically, we mentioned in one of the other vlogs that I was looking at a supercharger or a twin turbo system for the R8, and I'm still looking. I've not made any decisions yet. It's still kind of up in the air. I might just save the money, put it towards a 12C or a 458 or something like that. That would be the more sensible option probably, but that requires patience. I don't have much patience, so probably won't end up doing that, but we'll see. Anyone who checks our blog or follows us on Facebook will have probably seen me explain all this already, because I did write a blog post about it in quite a lot of detail, but I appreciate not everyone checks the blog, so I thought we'd do a video on it instead, or as well as. If you want to get like a more in-depth review of what I'm looking at and what I'm thinking, then check out the blog. I'll put a link to it down there. Obviously, the two main options are supercharger or twin turbo. There's a few different twin turbo options. There's like an Alpha, I think it's Alpha AMS twin turbo. There's the Hefner twin turbo. There's underground racing twin turbo. But as we explained in the other vlog, you can't really get underground racing stuff here in the UK. Nobody seems to sell it. They won't sell it to other people for them to install it or anything. So yeah, it's not really going to happen. So basically, the Hefner twin turbo, the Alpha twin turbo. There was a guy on the R8 forum who makes his own twin turbo systems, but I think it's kind of, he's put it on his car and he says it's fine, but I'd rather stick to the sort of main manufacturers at the moment. Then for the supercharger, I've only really seen one option for the supercharger, which is the VF Engineering 750, which is 750 brake supercharger. I've not seen any other options. There probably are some others, but that seems to be the main one that anyone who's put a supercharger in an R8, that seems to be what they go for. So that's the one I've been looking at. So what about actually comparing the two systems in terms of performance and what they give you? The supercharger is a little bit cheaper, but is it a much lesser product, if you like? On the face of it, it seems like, yeah, it seems like the supercharger gives you 750 brake horsepower, the twin turbo gives you 850, so go for the twin turbo, obviously. It's not quite that simple though. When you actually look at the torque graphs and the horsepower graphs, the twin turbo, and I'll flash up a picture of these rough graphs that I made, and bear in mind they are rough, okay? I've just taken some points I've taken like 7 points in the RPM range from the dynos that the supercharger people and the twin turbo people gave me, and just put them on a graph, just so I can roughly compare without having to keep looking between each graph. But don't read too much into this. It's, like I say, it's just my rough calculations, if you like. Not calculations, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I'll flash up the torque one first, because I think that's the most interesting. And you see that the VF supercharger, which is VF/SC on there, actually has a lot more torque than the twin turbo, up until about 5,000 RPM, I think it is. I'm going from memory here, so sorry if that's not exactly what's on the graph. So it actually has a lot more torque, even though just looking at the peak horsepower figure, you'd say, oh, well, the twin turbo's got more power everywhere. But I think what a lot of people don't realise is that the peak horsepower figures that you see, like 850 brake horsepower, 750 brake horsepower, they are just peak. They're not the entire rev range. That's just the absolute most. So railway track there. That's just the absolute most that it ever makes is 850 brake horsepower, and that's at like 7,000 RPM or something. So for the rest of the rev range, it's making less than that. And yeah, normally it still gives you a fairly good indication of the sort of power that the engine's making, because you don't normally get like a massive rise to like a really high peak. With the twin turbo, it kind of does that as well. Like you'll see from the horsepower graph, if I flash that up now, the twin turbo, oh sorry, not the horsepower graph, the torque graph again. The twin turbo is kind of like not a lot, and then shoots up. Whereas the supercharger is just a constantly high power band. So I think that would actually suit me more, because you've got power throughout the entire rev range, like you've got extra power throughout the entire rev range. Whereas the twin turbo is actually worse than stock up until about 3,000 RPM. And we're sat at 2,000 RPM right now in fourth gear. If I wanted to just floor it, now we're at 3,000 RPM. Okay, so there's a bit of time there. That's not like a rev range that you're never ever in. And yeah, if you're on track or whatever, if you're really going for it, you're going to be in the high revs most of the time. But just in day-to-day driving, I think it would be nicer to have more torque down there than less torque down there. Like I didn't think the twin turbo would actually be less powerful than the stock R8 at certain points, but apparently it is. And I emailed Hefner about this, asking if that's right, and they didn't reply. So I'm just gonna have to take that as a yes, that's right. And I got the right email address and everything. I'd emailed them about several things before, and they'd replied pretty much straight away. But this email, no. So, read from that what you will. I don't know. So what are the advantages of the twin turbo then? Well, first of all, you get that awesome sound. And as childish as it is, I do really want that sound. Like the turbo spooling up and the wastegate sound, that does sound really cool. And if you're paying all this money, you kind of want it to sound like you've spent a lot of money on it, don't you, really? So yeah, that would be really cool. And that is one of the things that actually attracts me to the twin turbo a lot. And I know that's really childish, but it does. Because the Supercharger, apparently you can't really hear at all in the R8 coupe, because it's kind of stuck back there behind the glass, so you don't hear the sort of whine of it at all, which I know some people don't like, but I quite like the Supercharger whine. So the twin turbo's got that going for it. It's got more potential for further tuning, so it comes at 850 horsepower when you get it, but it's easily tunable to over 1,000 apparently. Me personally, I don't really want to be tuning this to 1,000 brake horsepower or anything like that, because then you're definitely going to be replacing engine internals and clutches and all sorts of things, and it's just going to be too much. Like, I know some people love it, and it would be cool, I guess, to have 1,000 horsepower R8, but it's just not for me. All right, it's just too much. So yeah, there's the potential for further tuning, but yeah, not for me. There's the sound we've covered. There's the higher peak power, yeah. So you are getting more torque and more horsepower at the top end of the rev range, which would be cool. Let's just try and overtake this guy. But I don't know. It's nice, like thrashing it right up to the red line. Like, that is fun. But I feel like just having more power low down and in the mid range would be more usable from like a day-to-day driving kind of thing. Like, I don't drive slowly when I drive this, but I'm not always like at 8,000 RPM. Like, very rarely, to be honest, like right up there. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards the Supercharger just for that reason, really, because, well, for two reasons. One, it's like several £1,000s less. Two, it's more easily reversible, apparently. I don't know too much about the mechanical side of it, so don't shoot me down if that's completely incorrect, but they advertise it as being completely reversible. Whereas the twin turbo, you're replacing the entire exhaust system, you're drilling oil lines and all sorts of things. The Supercharger apparently is kind of a bolt-on kit, and you can take it off. Obviously it's not as simple as a few bolts, but you can take it off and it'll be back to completely stock, which appeals to me because if I come to sell the car, I can just take it off, sell the Supercharger separately maybe, get some money back, I don't know. I'm not counting on that, but it's a possibility. But at least you can sell the car as stock. Whereas trying to sell a twin turbo R8, I feel like would be quite a hard thing to do. Like, I was driving this the other day though, and like, it's so fast already. Like, you can just overtake things so easily. But yeah, with a Supercharger or a twin turbo, it's just going to be ridiculous. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I've kind of got the idea stuck in my head now. I'm like, I've got to get one of them. Like, because 12C and 458 are just too far away, too expensive. So I guess I'll post another video when I decide what I'm going to go for. I feel like I've not done a particularly good job of explaining all the pros and cons of each one in this video. If you really want to see the kind of details, like I said, check out the blog post that I did, because that's a lot more sort of well put together than this is. This is just me rambling while I'm driving. I don't know what I'm chatting about now, so I'm going to go, because it's getting dark and I'm just talking bollocks. So I'll probably cut most of that out so you won't see all the bollocks I was talking. See all the bollocks? I don't know. All of the bollocks. Right. Bye.